Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another video. Today's video is actually going to be something a little bit different. It's not going to be beauty related at all. I'm going to be talking about my anxiety story. I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder about 2.5–3 years ago, and I asked on Instagram if that's something you guys wanted to see, and an overwhelming amount of people said yes. I believe the more that we talk about mental health and the more we normalize it, the better off the world's gonna be. I think everyone would just be happier if they realized that they're not the only ones. I just wish that I knew I wasn't the only one going through what I was going through when I was going through it. Does that even make sense? I don't know. Regardless, let's get into it. We can start right from the beginning. I have suffered from anxiety my entire life. The only thing is I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was anxiety. I just kind of knew that I was always scared. Things that are supposed to be exciting for children, like going to summer camp, having a sleepover, going to any sort of extracurricular activity that's supposed to be fun. Those things absolutely terrified me. And every time one of those events would come up, I would get a tummy ache. Obviously, it wasn't a normal tummy ache, like I didn't have the flu or anything, but I wasn't sure why that was happening. I didn't know why I always got a stomach ache around important or exciting events. And I would tell my parents that I was having a stomach ache, and they would... I don't even really remember how they reacted, if I'm being completely honest, because I was just so consumed in my own mind that I didn't really notice any external reactions. However, when you're a child and you're constantly getting a tummy ache, people are going to think, number one, that something is seriously wrong with you, or number two, that you're faking it. So I didn't want people to think that I was faking these tummy aches, so I just kind of stopped telling people about them. I just kind of suffered in silence because I didn't want my parents to think when I was actually sick that I was faking it again, if that makes sense. So that was that until about high school, and that's when all of my friends and people around me started consuming alcohol. And I would, consume alcohol with them. I would drink, and it just gave me panic attacks. Like, I would just freak out, and I would just want to go home, but I couldn't call my parents because I had been drinking without them knowing, so I didn't want to get in trouble. So I would just stay where I was at and literally freak out by myself. And even to this day, I don't drink for that reason. It kind of left a scar on my soul from those panic attacks, and it gives me the worst anxiety consuming alcohol, so I just don't. But again, I didn't know what that was. I just knew that alcohol didn't make me feel good, but I still kind of drank anyways because I was a teenager. That's what you do. You literally just ignore consequences in the sake of a good time. So that was that. In high school, I was in a pretty solid routine, so I didn't really have any real panic episodes. The only times I would really get nervous that I can think of is when I was writing a test for school, and when I was going to my horse riding lessons. I was always really nervous for those. The only time that I can really remember when I actually had a freak out was before I went to Paris. I was in high school and we did like a little exchange thing, so I was going to Paris without my parents. And that was my first time traveling alone, I think, and I just freaked out. I'm really attached to my parents. I'm an only child, so leaving them was always hard for me. And I was gone for 2 weeks, so I just lost my mind. I was almost gonna try and back out of going, even though they had spent so much money. I'm really glad I didn't, because I had a fantastic time, and once I was there, I loved it. But before leaving, I was a mess. And those are the only times in high school that I could really think of where my anxiety was bad. But in high school, I really didn't have anything to worry about. Like, I didn't have a job. I was just focusing on school. I would go every day and see the people that I always saw, go to the classes that I always went to. It was just such a routine that there was nothing to be scared of for me. And then I went to university. Now, this is where it gets interesting. I decided to go to university 5 hours away from my parents, despite the signs that I was not ready for that. I was not ready to be away from my parents, especially that far. Like, it's not like I could just, you know, hop on a bus and go home for the weekend. But in my mind, I kind of knew that that's what I needed to do, because if I went somewhere close, I would either, one, be home all the time, or two, there is no two, I would be home all the time and I wouldn't, you know, gain that independence that you're supposed to get as a young adult. So I decided to leave, and it's one of the best and worst decisions I've ever made. It definitely made me grow. So I was not scared at all leading up to going to university. I was fine, which looking back is kind of weird because it's usually the anticipation that makes me nervous. So I was fine. I was just packing and I was, you know, ready to go. We made the 5-hour trek out to Ottawa from the Greater Toronto area. And I was all good. I moved in and met my roommates, and that was that, until my parents left. My parents and my boyfriend obviously had to go home, so they left, and that was when I realized that, one, I was all alone in a new city. Two, I didn't know anybody. Like, I think I knew maybe 2 people from my high school that went to this school. So yeah, I was like pretty much alone. I didn't know what to do with myself. Like, what do? I just sat there and was like, I don't know anyone. I don't have any homework to do yet. I just sat there, and that's when I freaked out. I just cried, and I called my parents and I said, you need to come back. You need to come back. And they didn't. And I just cried and cried and cried and hyperventilated and cried some more. And I just basically had a panic attack in my room. And that's like the first time that I truly had like a full-blown episode of anxiety in your face. Like, there's no denying what that was. You know, as I went through the motions of day-to-day life and developed a new routine and started to go to my classes to kind of distract me, I was fine. I was okay. So I didn't really think anything of it. I just thought of it as, you know, an adjustment period, which it was. However, most people don't react to an adjustment period in such a severely negative way. And it's funny because my roommate, who is now my best friend, she was going through really bad anxiety at that time as well. And we were just like coexisting because we didn't really know each other that well. And we were just suffering side by side, and we didn't tell each other. Like, I could only imagine how much easier that time would have been had I just told her, you know, like, I'm scared. And so, you know, life went on until about second year. Yeah, that was my first year of university. So second year, I started getting more of the general anxiety symptoms that I had experienced when I was a kid. And what that was surrounding was school and exams and wanting to do well. So I had a lot of midterms coming up. It was January, I specifically remember it, and I just wasn't sleeping. I wasn't really eating. I just felt off, and I just felt scared, and I didn't know what I was scared of because I was, you know, preparing for my exams as I normally would. I don't know. I guess I was scared of failure. Even to this day, I'm not sure what it was that made me tick. All I knew is I was experiencing physical symptoms again. My stomach was upset, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't really eating until I was finished that bout of midterms. So that's how I knew that, sorry, my nose is itchy. So that's how I knew that that's what it was. I just remember my roommate, she would constantly, she was by my side for the entire thing, and I really appreciate her for that even to this day. She, you know, would take me to the grocery store. We had a 24-hour grocery store that was really close to us, and she would take me there. She would drive me there in the middle of the night to get me like night or ZzzQuil, I guess, and like other sleeping medications to just try and get me to sleep because I was not sleeping for days. And again, I didn't really tell anyone. My roommate knew because I lived with her, but no one else really knew what I was going through, and I just kind of, I don't know why I didn't reach out. I just didn't really think that I had a disorder. It was just something, it was just stress. And then I got into the co-op program at my school, which means that you do work terms, paid work terms at different workplaces for 4 months at a time to gain experience. It adds an extra year to your degree, but I figured it's paid work experience. I don't have any, so it was kind of a no-brainer for me. So I ended up having to move around an hour away from school for one of my work terms. So that was stressful because I was going through exams, it was December, and I was moving to start my work term in January. So it was one of my work terms and I was moving, and as soon as I moved in, I've also found that if I sleep in an unfamiliar place, I get really bad anxiety, and obviously a new apartment is an unfamiliar place. So I was sleeping in a new apartment, starting my first real job, and it just hit me really hard. I didn't sleep for days. I cried every single day for like a week. And yeah, I just figured, again, an adjustment period, but it's not normal to adjust in that way. So I ignored it and I got into my new routine and I was fine. So what really, you know, got me diagnosed was my boyfriend had moved in and all was going well, and we decided to get a dog. We already had Fred, and honestly, I don't know why we decided to get a dog in an apartment. It wasn't very smart. We just kind of really liked this one dog. Her name was Francine. She was a love bug, and she was part hound, so she was really loud and she was really smart. So yeah, we decided to get a dog, and the important thing to know about me is I'm a cat person. It's not that I don't like dogs, I just don't know how to take care of dogs. You have to, especially young dogs. She was only like 9 months old. She was not trained at all, and that's fine, but I'm not the person to train them. I can't do it. Like, without learning how, I literally have no idea. I would have to go to like a special like training school or something on how to be with dogs. I don't know how to live with dogs. I never did as a child. You don't really train a cat. You have to, you know, litter train them, but that's it, and they pick it up pretty quickly. So I don't know, I had no idea what to do. The dog was so high energy in comparison to obviously Fred, because Fred just sleeps all the time. So I just literally didn't know what to do, and I, again, freaked out. I just stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stomach issues, crying all the time, and my mom came up to help us through that. We ended up having to take the dog back to the shelter, unfortunately, but she found a home in like 2 days, so it made me feel a lot less bad about that because she was fine. But it was really heartbreaking for both of us, for Ryan and I, and it was a really powerful learning experience. But that's when my mom put her foot down and was like, enough is enough, like, we're going to the doctor. At first I was like, yes, let's go to the doctor, because I can't do this every time my routine changes slightly. It's not realistic. So the thing was, I was an hour away from my family doctor, so we ended up having to go to the emergency room. It's a small town, but it's really big on mental health. Like, it has a lot of institutions, maybe because there's a lot of mentally ill people there. I don't really know. But if there was a good place to see a mental health doctor, it was definitely there, because I saw a psychiatrist that day. So I went to the emergency room and the doctor said, you know, what's going on? The psychiatrist, once I finally got in to see her, it was a bit of a waiting period, but like, I saw her that day, so that's not too bad. Honestly, I don't really remember that day very well. It was all a blur. I was sleep deprived. I was starved. I think my mom may have done a lot of the explaining as to what my symptoms were and, you know, what was going on. So she took a urine sample to make sure that I wasn't on any drugs, and I think there were traces of marijuana in my system. I was just self-medicating at that point, literally willing to try anything to make these symptoms stop. She said, you know, like, don't do that anymore, and I was like, okay, if you can make the symptoms stop, then I won't. So yeah, she said, you need to sleep. And I was like, thanks. Thanks, I didn't know that. So she prescribed me Zopiclone, which is a sleeping pill, and it's also an anti-anxiety medication. She prescribed me clonazepam, which is for when I have a panic attack, which honestly isn't very often, but they're still really useful to have. And she put me on a medication called Cipralex. I was on 5 milligrams, increasing to 10 milligrams. And yeah, so those were the medications I was prescribed that day. The Cipralex didn't really work for me. Going from 5 milligrams to 10 milligrams wasn't too bad. The symptoms of any antidepressant kind of suck for the first few weeks. Cipralex gave me the shits really bad. They kind of just made me feel a little fuzzy, but I was able to go to work within a few days. So really they were tolerable. The only thing with Cipralex is once my body got adjusted to it, I wasn't sleeping again. I would sleep for about 3 hours and then I would wake up and just be up for the rest of the night, which is not sustainable. So I switched over to a medication called Zoloft, and that medication worked way better for me. I almost had no symptoms going on it, and it's just been really effective. And there were just a couple other minor side effects that I didn't really enjoy, so I went off of it. I didn't even consult my doctor. It was a stupid decision to go off of it, but I did. I was okay for a little while, but then I got overloaded with stress at school again. I was doing my honors project, I had a big presentation, and I tried a different medication because I didn't really like the Zoloft anymore. So I tried a new medication called Effexor. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. I don't know, I'll put it down below here. And I had a terrible reaction to it. It heightened my anxiety to the point where I didn't even want to live anymore. Like, it was really, really bad. And the thing is, if I start to panic, my panic and my anxiety will last like 2 weeks of me just like suffering. So I've really been adamant on nipping it in the butt. The moment I feel that it's happening, I'll go work out, or I will go, you know, take my clonazepam or whatever it may be, because I know that if I get into this cycle, I won't come out of it for a really long time. So that's what happened there. I, you know, started panicking, and the medication, I wasn't sleeping on it, you know, like my usual symptoms. For 2 weeks, my mom had to come take care of me. And I went to the doctor, and all I could remember was that I was on Cipralex last time. I don't know why I completely forgot about the Zoloft. I was just in a state where I was just like literally just needing something to make me feel better. So I went to the walk-in clinic and was like, put me on Cipralex. That's what I was on last time, even though that didn't really work for me last time. I don't know why I did that, really. And the Cipralex really reacted negatively with me the second time because I went straight on 10 milligrams instead of working up to it. I would take it and it would feel like my skin was burning off, and I would just get really bad anxiety. It made my anxiety worse, and that happens for the first few weeks. It usually makes things worse before it gets better, but I just, like, it made it so bad. It was not tolerable. and I was crying all the time. My skin felt like it was peeling off. It gave me really bad diarrhea, and I wasn't eating. Complete loss of appetite, like completely. I would like get a whiff of someone's cooking and just like almost throw up. Like, it was just so bad. So I got through the first few weeks of that. Honestly, I don't know how. And then again, the not sleeping kicked in. So I went back to the doctor and was like, look, I don't know why I asked to be put on Cipralex. I was just in a really foggy state and completely forgot that Zoloft worked better for me. So I switched back over to Zoloft because I find that those minor inconvenient symptoms that I don't even remember what they were because I don't really have them much anymore, they are so much better than the way I'm feeling when I'm off medication. I went from 25 milligrams to 50 milligrams, and I'm still on 50. My doctor has approved me to go up to 75 if I need it. I just haven't really felt that I've needed it yet. And I still have my clonazepam, and I'm off Zopiclone because my sleeping has gotten a lot better. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than what it was. And around that time, I also started seeing a therapist who really helped me put things into perspective and kind of helped me get to the bottom of why I was the way that I was. So I still see him from time to time, but it's not as necessary anymore, and it is really expensive, so it's not really something that, you know, I just go to regularly whenever I want. And so I started going to therapy, and I went through my school and I got academic accommodations that has been life-changing. I got extensions on assignments when needed. I think I've only used that once because I haven't needed it really since I've been medicated. And I get extra time on exams, and I get to write my exams privately away from the rest of the class, which I don't know why I'm getting emotional talking about this part in particular, but it has seriously changed the way that I view my academics because it actually feels like I can do it. So that's been seriously great, and I'm glad I reached out that way. I still see my doctor regularly just to follow up on my medications if we need to increase dosages or whatever. We haven't had to so far, so that's been great. And another big thing is I started going to yoga and I started meditation. And I'm not trying to say that like yoga and meditation can solve all your problems, but I think in combination with the medication and the therapy, like those three things, they really did wonders for me, especially because yoga made me exercise. Exercise is something that I find really helpful. I can't stress enough how helpful it actually is, even if you don't want to do it. So yeah, yoga makes me exercise if I do more of like a flow-based class, or I could do a meditation class, or more of a yin-based class, which is just deep stretching. So I have options. I got myself, you know, a unlimited pass monthly, and it's kind of expensive. It's $85 a month. However, I am willing to invest that in myself, and I realize that now. I realize that I am my first priority, and you can't pour from an empty cup, so I'm willing to invest that $85 a month so that I take care of myself. Anyways, that was kind of a really long video. It's not really exciting, but I just kind of wanted to tell you guys the story about how I was diagnosed with anxiety and how I've strived to overcome it. I'm still working, you know, I still have my days, I still have my weeks even, but things are looking up, and I hope that they only go up from here. So thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you on Tuesday. Bye.